In this section, we're going to talk about vertical transportation. By that, I mean the stairways, the escalators, and the elevators that we place in our multi-story buildings. So let's first start off with just a discussion of the importance of stairs and basically its study of it, environmental controls. Um, Primarily, we look at it in the code as a means of egress, a way to get out in the form of an emergency exit from the building, a dependable exit for the building. And so a lot of the um, ways that we position our stairs, the doors, the floors that we cut through our buildings to place our stairs have to do with the safety provided by this form of egress. And we'll cover that a little bit in detail going forward, especially in the lab. But for the most part of this discussion, we're going to talk about elevators because they are unique into themselves. They are expensive. They can account for up to 10 to 20% of the construction budget. They take up a very small volume in the building, so they're an attractive way of moving vertically. They provide accessibility that stairways don't for people in wheelchairs or with other disabilities. But they do have downsides. They consume energy. And then again, upsides, they can be located in what's called the core structural center of our buildings, and they can form part of the stability system for maybe a way that this graphic will help to describe for you. So here we have a multi-story building. We're looking at a floor plan. This could be any floor plan of the building. We're looking at what a glazing system with outside offices, just to help you get oriented here. And we have these two darkened areas, which are considered the core of a skyscraper. They perform the vertical shear, or excuse me, the horizontal shear of the building to give it stiffness as it rises up multi-stories. And it's also the place then typically that is fire protected and safe to perform egress. So in this case, we see these thickened walls around the exterior of it. We see doorways containing the hallways for these egress methods. And in this case, these are elevator cores. Some of these are remotely located, which means they may be for service or private alternate access to floors. And some of these are in this public area. So we have 6 elevators in this public access area. Um, they've also chosen in this idea of the core of the building to locate the bathroom facilities. But this is a stiffened core in the center of the building. Typically then with our egress stairway, so we have 2 stairways that allow us to get through the building in the event of a fire and the failure of our elevator vertical transportation system. So those overlying concepts, this idea of core and the centralization of these functions to stiffen multi-story buildings, is a critical understanding going forward for architects thinking about designing building systems. And obviously, elevators aren't new, and this is a case of a really old elevator installation, probably a retrofit. This looks like a stairwell behind it and the placement, the ornate placement of an elevator. So they can, I've included this to compare and contrast with a modern one we'll discuss in a second. Um, but they can become a beautiful amenity also to the building. We have a lot of opportunity to craft and design both the interior of the cab and the entryway to it. So there are many opportunities when we're participating in the development of elevator systems to enhance design and functionality. And here we have the Apple Store in Chicago. And this is now, I guess, the removal of ornate detail, a full glass enclosure of an elevator with almost no means of identifying how it moves vertically or the mechanics of how the doors open and close. So we have that to kind of compare and contrast with each other. So one of the things that's actually a benefit for us as designers is that elevator design is really governed by strict codes. New York City has its own elevator code. Probably Chicago has some other version of it. ANSI and ASME standards for these escalators that we'll talk about later and elevators are well established, well known. and will almost be inherent in many of the component selections that we do within it. But it's important for us to understand that these are really heavily regulated installations. We will use resources of professionals when we talk about their actual detailing in the installation in a building. Not to deter you or intimidate you, but most of our attention in this part of the project will be to understand some of the basic ideas of locating them in the building and integrating them with the flow of people and movement within inside of our facilities. So I'll end that here and we'll pick up with the two basic types of elevators next.